starting today's message exactly at vulnerable. So we've gotten pretty vulnerable during this series in general, but my confession is that there is a very good chance I have zero business preaching this message to you this morning. So now that you're excited to listen to me for the next little bit, if I'm being really honest, slow is not my strong suit. If you've known me for a while, I am one of those people that it's gotten better, but it used to be that at least once a week I would have that conversation with someone that is just like, Natalie, I don't understand how you do it all. Okay, well, here is the answer. I was a constant, literal ball of anxiety and obligation 100% of the time. That is how I did it all. And my anxiety fueled me to just keep going and keep going and keep going and Energizer Bunny and keep doing life. So, but Mari did allude to the fact that there has been a journey. And especially around this time last year, things began to drastically change. But we are still very much in the learning process and have a whole lot of slowing down left to do and figure out. And so today's message is coming not from I'm the source expert by any means, but let's do this together. So here's a question, a measure of slowing down that I want us all to think about. And let me ask you this and answer it, honestly to yourself. But when was the last time with your family, whatever family looks like for you, you were able to leisurely come to the table, sit down for a meal, enjoy time together, laugh, lament, lounge, no hurry at all, and then leave the table without rushing on to the next thing? When was the last time you got to do that? How many of you, your answer was like a holiday? Or some sort of occasion that brings families together anyways, anything like that, Okay, well, holidays don't count because we are good at slowing down on holidays usually. But the truth is, we're almost always in a hurry for one reason or another, right? But I've been on a path to slowing down, and it was inspired by a quote from the Baptist teacher and author Dallas Willard. He was asked by a pastor that he was mentoring, what do I need to do to stay spiritually healthy? This is a good question, right? Like one we should all be asking. And the response was little different than I would have thought it would be. Dallas Willard, he says this: you must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. Hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life in our day. So the pastor, like we all do when we hear something good in a message, or, those of you who said, that's good. He took a note and then he waited for the next thing, right? He says, that's a good one. Now what else is there? But Dallas's answer was, there is nothing else. Just that. Anyone else? Anyone in this room feel like they're in a room where hurry has been ruthlessly eliminated? Anybody? Yeah. That's what I thought. I don't know that I can even imagine fully what that might look like. Like, I think some of us, like the pastor asking the question, we see slowly as simply a step in the process to find peace, but not the actual solution to our hurried lives. The day in the life of a typical American looks rushed, panicked, and overwhelmed. So I'm going to read through a scenario, and maybe part of this will sound familiar. Okay, ready? On an average American day, you wake up to an alarm, probably hit snooze. You make coffee, wake up the kids and urge them to hurry, get out of the door, get your shoes on, whatever that may be. You grab your things, maybe you forgot something and had to run back. You drive around town and you do school drop-offs, and you're sipping on coffee that used to be hot and eating granola bars that are stale because you threw them in the car yesterday and you forgot to grab anything new. At work, you finally sit down and you have a long list of to-dos and you start to tackle it, and you're feeling okay, and you finish this major project and then you get a breath. There's like this release. But immediately your coworkers start asking questions, make suggestions, make alterations to that work you just finished. You finally arrive at lunch break and you're sitting there and you're watching Netflix on your phone. And to be honest, you take an extra 15 minutes because you need to finish that episode and you just need a minute. You're dreading returning to that task list. Then a coworker rushes in to inform you that the project must be redone today or you're going to lose the account. Quickly, you finish the last bite of the sandwich, throw the chips in your bag and forget about them, and head back. But on the way to get to that project to save the account, your boss stops you about a different project that they expected to be finished last week. By the time you get back to your desk, you're anxious, overwhelmed, and can't figure out what to do next. You go to a coworker to try to talk it out or get some support, but on the way you get a phone call because your kid's school is calling because your youngest has a 102-degree fever again. You hang up and you leave work, you get the kid, you get to the only doctor's appointment available in the next 72 hours. You hope that it gets done on time so that you can get to the oldest basketball game so that you don't miss anything he plays, so that you can get home and get dinner on time and get kids in bed on time, and then you collapse into bed, dead tired, knowing that tomorrow is going to look exactly the same. Sound familiar to anybody? The circumstances, the details might be a little different, but I'm betting that most of us can relate to the feelings of this person's hurried life, one thing after another after another. Chances are you could be experiencing what cardiologists Meyer Friedman and R.H. Rosenman call hurry sickness. Hurry sickness is the feeling of constantly being behind and rushed, which causes stress and anxiety. If you are unsure if you have this ailment, I'm going to show you in a second 10 symptoms. And what I want you to do, honest just to yourself as I list them out, is keep count of how many you have felt in the last 6 months of your life. Okay? This is assessment time. We're going to figure out where we're at. All right? You don't have to share, so be honest. But here are the 10 symptoms of hurry sickness: irritability, hypersensitivity, restlessness, workaholism or just nonstop activity, emotional numbness, out of order priorities, lack of care for your body, escapist behaviors, slippage or lack thereof of spiritual disciplines, and isolation. All right, be honest, not a group assignment, a moment for you to reflect. Out of these 10 symptoms, how many have you experienced in the last 6 months? Okay, what about in the last 6 weeks? How about the last 6 days? So it's been a season of illness and blizzards and division. Are you hurrying through all of that? So back to the vulnerability. I am the embodiment of a 10.
There you are.
Thanks, husband. What's great is he's going to agree with this just as much. That's like a 10 in the good way. I mean more like she's a 10, but she experiences all 10 symptoms of hurry sickness every single day. Do you agree just as much, husband? Yeah. Yes, he's nodding back there. Okay. Smart man. He has learned. Like I said, this is not a message about how I have it all figured out and I'm coming out better on the other side. I can honestly say I am right there with you in the trenches, fighting for my life and desperately clinging to whatever might keep me going through the end of this war. Here's the real kicker for you. I thought I was preparing to teach this from a place of experience. I thought I was coming to this having figured at least a good chunk of it out. But as I began researching and studying, I realized just how hurried I still am. In full circle irony, the book that I needed to read in order to preach this message properly is entitled The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And I approached it with, I need to read this as fast as I can so that I can write this message on time for the real deadline coming up. I know I clearly needed to read it, guys, okay? But some of you might know that I was on purpose avoiding this book for a long time because the last book I read by this author, John Mark Comer, led to me quitting my job and upending my life in order to change the way that I lived, literally in order to slow down. So I avoided it for a while. I mean, a girl can only take so much change at a time, right? Yet, despite the drastic changes I've made less than a year ago, and to be honest, have fairly well sustained a lot of those changes, I still experience all 10 symptoms of hurry sickness every single day. So, why is that? Why can I have done so much, but it feel like so little progress? Well, we live and are surrounded by hustle culture. One that is constantly pushing us to put more hours in the day, to be faster, to work harder, to accomplish more than those who came before us or the people we follow on Instagram. Last week, I was listening to an artist talk, and he mentioned how much work he had done to slow his life down. By the way, artists are brilliant, and a lot of them do go very slowly, which is excellent. He shared this quote. His name is Luke Armstrong, and he said, "There is no faster. There is only panic and disorder." I have never felt more seen than in that moment. I literally thought, oh my gosh, someone gets it. Like, thank God, someone is speaking my language. But as I've very firmly established, this is not what I want my life to look like, right? So I come back to the question that I think those of you who've been here for a bit might start calling my catchphrase. It is, but how? But how? How the heck do I get off the hamster wheel that has become my life, that has created this chaos and disorder and panic and anxiety? How do I get to peace? How do I get to slow? And I love the simple phrase in The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, John Mark Comer. He starts the book and he says, don't buckle up, settle in. So let's settle in. And let's read this final value we want to explore here at Dwell is the idea of simplicity. And we've written it like this: slow down. If you just want to say 2 words, slow down. But we do more by doing less. We take Sabbath seriously, live thankfully, and eliminate hurry so we might live simple and free. You could visit many other churches in America, and you're likely to find the 5 values that we've talked about so far within their language. So faith, service, love, community formation. Those are what we've talked about so far. And you might not see them like right in their value statement, but you're going to hear them when they talk about messages. They might be in statement of beliefs. They might be in artwork on the walls or in the bulletin that they print every week. But slow down. That one's going to be rare. Simplify? See, many churches do the exact opposite. The modern church has done a really good job of bringing hustle culture within the church walls. And then we say it's to stay relevant or to meet people where they're at. Or maybe it's just plain oversightement to something like hurry sickness. But this value, slow down, it's what sets Dwell apart. It's the secret sauce, if you will. It's what makes us feel different when you walk in the room. And as much as we would love to be a unique little snowflake and like we thought of this and we're completely different than everyone else, we're really not. We're really not. There are many other church communities that have prioritized reducing their speed and moving closer to the pace of Jesus. Chances are you haven't heard much about them. And there's a reason for that. Do you know why? They are not concerned about whether or not 800 people show up every Sunday. They're not concerned if their social media following keeps growing. They have slowed down and chosen to focus solely on what truly matters. They live in a way and they do church in a way that is countercultural. That is why it is so dang hard. That's why it's so hard. Because even within the Christian culture, the ideas of hustle and hurry in the name of the kingdom have taken root. And while I agree, the kingdom of God and the teachings of Jesus, they do prescribe a sense of urgency, but that is not the same as hurry. They do not model hurry. And in his teachings on how to be an apprentice of Jesus, John Mark Comer, he often asks the question, what would Jesus do if he were me? What would Jesus do if he were me? Remember that story of the average American day that I told a little earlier? So that's actually my take, a modernized version of a series of events in Jesus's life. What would it look like if he had approached our day this way? And you can find the story I pulled this from in Mark 4 and 5. It's actually in all the Gospels, or 3 of the 4 Gospels. And it's a flip on the question, what would I have done if I was in Jesus's shoes? What would I have done if I had encountered this series of events? Spoiler alert, Jesus handles it a lot better than we do. A lot better, okay? So while he was firm at times, he never once snapped. You don't see that irritability, that hypersensitivity. In fact, let's take a look at what he did. So at the top of Mark 4, we find Jesus. He's teaching at a lake, right? And there's this big crowd of people. He did this often. There's so many people that he moves into a boat, probably so that he can be seen, probably to make some more room. But he teaches this series of lessons. And as soon as he gets done teaching, the first thing his disciples say to him is, we didn't get any of that. What do you mean? Can you explain this to us again? And in our scenario, in our workday, this is like the first thing that starts to send us into a spiral, right? But let's look at what Jesus did. So he slows down and he explains it all again. He says this in Mark 4:23 through 24. Anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand. Then he added, pay close attention to what you hear. The closer you listen, the more understanding you will be given, and you will receive even more. All right. Does anyone else have a pet peeve about repeating yourself? Anyone? Okay. This is well known in our home that people won't ask me for clarification because I hate repeating myself. And it is like a surefire way for me to get set off. If you want to see the irritability kick in, that's the way to guarantee it. Should have known. Did not predict that one. But how many times do our kids, our spouses, our coworkers, ourselves, how many times do we miss what's most important because we won't stop, slow down, and listen? How many times do you miss it because you're trying to multitask watching that thing on your phone while someone's talking to you? Jesus says, okay, I'll tell you again. Listen up, but I'm going to tell you again. All right, at this point in the story, right, we're looking at a long day in the life of Jesus. So in the 3 Gospels, we learned that the crowd is still surrounding Jesus, but it's getting closer and closer to evening. So he says to the disciples, let's go across the lake. And as they cross the lake, he falls asleep inside of the boat. Then this giant storm comes, and the disciples are terrified, but Jesus is sleeping. And they wake him up, they ask him for help, and what is his response? Mark 4:39, it says, when Jesus woke up, he rebuked the wind and said to the waves, silence, be still. Suddenly, the wind stopped, and there was a great calm. Jesus simply speaks silence, and there's peace. Okay, we've left the big crowd, we've taught long lessons, we've repeated ourselves, we've calmed the storm, and we finally get to the other shore. And it literally reads like Jesus steps off the boat and is confronted by this man, and he's been possessed by a bunch of demons. So much so, he's so violent that his entire community has chained him multiple times, but the demons are so powerful that he keeps breaking out of them. Everyone avoids this guy, and he walks right up to Jesus, and the man is terrified. The demons inside of him are terrified. And this is like a thing to encounter, right? Right off the boat. You step off. And what does Jesus do? He brings silence. He silences the many voices in the man's body and simply sends them away. Not in this big, like, superhero show of power, lightning bolt, thunder, type thing. Just calmly sends them away. And what I find so interesting here is that the spirits were afraid because Jesus was so calm. They were afraid of his slowed down presence. And what happens next? The community that had feared that man so much now fears Jesus more, and they beg him to leave. So he's just gotten there, he's done one thing, and he gets back on the boat, and he goes somewhere again, and then he lands this time, and immediately, the Bible says, immediately, approached by a man whose 12-year-old daughter is dying. Okay, so we've preached to these major crowds. We've repeated ourselves. We've calmed a storm. We've thrown demons out. In our story, we are full-blown spiral, panic, probably crying in our car at this point. And Jesus is still going. He's approached. This girl is dying. What do we do? It's heavy. And Jesus says, okay, let's go. Let's go heal her. And despite the fact that he had to have been drained at this point, right? Like, physically, he's in a human body. There's got to be little energy left. How many of us, we come home to our kids and they ask for our presents, but we're too drained to pay attention. We're too drained to stop and talk to our spouse and hear about their day. I just need a minute. I need to decompress for a second. You go in the bathroom and you watch like 25 videos from social media, and then you come out and engage with everybody, Last year, as I was quitting my job, in order to slow down, my boss, who is also a mother, she summed up a lot of the things I was saying as my reasoning as this. She said, you want to give your kids more than your leftovers. She was so right. And I hadn't really seen it yet. I didn't say it that way, but she was so right that for most of my life, for most of their lives, they had gotten my leftovers when I came home. And I wanted to prioritize them getting what they deserve. See, Jesus, in this story, we see him continually give. Why? How can he do that, right? Keep listening. This is the part that really gets me. And I think we hear a lot of these stories isolated from one another and forget that they happen kind of back to back. Jesus is so self-aware, so self-actualized that as he's moving through this giant crowd, I picture celebrity trying to push through paparazzi just to get into the Met Gala or something, it's that kind of crowd. And a woman touches the hem of his garment. And he's so aware, so self-actualized that he can feel the power leave. He didn't feel her touch him. Everybody was touching him, there's hands everywhere. He felt the power. He is so healthy, and she was so faithful that her healing came simply through a touch. Jesus, he could have kept going. She had what she needed, right? Touch, and she was healed. But he stopped because he was in no hurry. Despite the fact that he was on the way to save a little girl's life, he was in no hurry. He stopped to ensure that this woman was seen and known And he said this, Mark 5:34, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Your suffering is over." There's no rebuke for her not asking permission for the healing, right? He doesn't take off his cloak. She was diseased, considered unclean. People had avoided her for years. He doesn't take off his cloak because he didn't want that dirty on him. He speaks peace because he knows that she has not known a day of peace since she was young. 12 years is what I think the Bible says. Finally, he reaches the house and he walks up and he learns that the little girl has died. They're mourning, they're standing outside, and Jesus says, "She's only asleep. It's okay." And they laugh at him. So he sends them away because this isn't about a crowd. This isn't about what's about to happen being seen. And he goes in and he holds the little girl's hand and he says, "Get up." And she does. What looks different between Jesus' story and ours? Almost everything. Where we sped up with task after task and demand, he slowed down. He spoke silence and calm. He taught the importance of listening. When we panicked, he gave calm, simple, clear directions. When we were confronted with another challenge, we spiraled. Jesus engaged and resolved. When someone takes from us, we're sent into despair. We become a victim. Jesus pauses to ensure that they got all that they needed. This may seem impossible to do in your own life, and I'm right there with you. We are not Jesus. We don't often feel that sense of power, that sense of peace that he just got to walk around with. But here's the good news. Where we see no solution, he is the solution. Jesus has the answer to how to do this. You see, he was incredibly busy. Despite that busyness, we do not see hurry. We do not see chaos. Though these stories appear as if they happened all in one long day or, a couple of days, they may have taken place over the course of several. The fact remains that Jesus was surrounded by people constantly. And on top of that, everyone either needed something from him, they were desperate to learn from him, and so they kept approaching him, or they hated him so much that they were plotting how to kill him. These are the people he's encountering all the time. In order to sleep, he had to be on a boat in the middle of the lake, right? But let's not forget also, this entire time, he knows for a fact, day by day, that he is moving closer to a vicious and torturous death. He has known this through all of these scenarios. So, how did he not fall prey to something like hurry sickness? How did Jesus maintain peace and calm? Was it just because he was Jesus? No, he was fully man too. So how did he do it? Well, he understood his limitations and he worked with them. See, he was constantly on the go. So he designed a rhythm that made space for rest and connection with his Father. Enough rest to be restored to such a level that he could carry the demanding load of his life and ministry. Enough connection to his Father that the yoke that should have been heavy, like our opening verse, felt light. For those of you who were asking earlier with me, but how? Here's the answer. Jesus was well practiced in 4 things: silence and solitude, Sabbath, simplicity, and slowing. You see, as your pastor, I'm faced with a bit of a puzzle as we reach this point in the day, because everything in me wants to take time and walk through each one of these 4 things and tell you exactly what it means and give you everything you need to walk out of here today and put these into practice in your life. But my version of slowing down today is to trust. See, Pastor Aeric and I, we often refer to this as playing the long game. See, I'm going to trust that I don't have to give you the answer to all 4 of these methods right now. I'm choosing to believe that you'll be back here to listen to us, teach, and learn more and dive into each of these practices over time. I'm believing that you are incredibly capable people and intelligent that can be pastor in your own life and pick up the same book that I read to learn about these. I'm trusting and praying that this week you'll pull out your Bible and you'll read some about the life of Jesus so that you can learn for yourself how he lived and what his pace was like. Lastly, I have confidence that many of you in this room are heeding the collective sum of the messages we've been preaching these last few weeks about values, and that you're making space in your life to join us soon, either on Fridays or Tuesdays, so we can dig deeper into these practices like Sabbath and begin working together to integrate them into your life. These are the choices I'm making today to slow down, resisting the urge I feel to give every single answer, to lay it out for you. What about you? What choices are you going to make? In his book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, John Mark Comer, he shares this thought: attention is the beginning of devotion. In the end, your life is the sum of what you gave your attention to. What do you want to look back and see? What if today was the beginning of a new chapter? Worship team, you can come on forward. What if today was the beginning of a new chapter and the story that you write from here on out looks something like this? You might recognize a few of the phrases in here from our values. Beginning in 2025, I slowed down my life and I made space for God to be at the center. After that, I felt like every time I entered a room, my presence made an impact. I was filled with a desire to ensure every person I encountered felt seen, known, and needed. I invested in a community that helped me understand life is best done together. And through this community, I was encouraged to develop a faith that activated when facing any trial with the response, "He can do it." That sounds like a pretty good end to the story, right? But I think it also sounds like a good beginning and a good middle and a good every page in between, if we're willing to take the journey. It's yours for the taking.